Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Process, where we will be getting buckets for the November 18th, 2016 NBA slate. My name is Stephen Porter. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Porter Jr. And without further ado, let's dive in here because we've got a big 10-game slate on a Friday, and I want to cover this as quickly as possible. The first game we're going to look at is the Golden State Warriors visiting the Boston Celtics as 7-point favorites. 7-point road favorite here is kind of stands out a little bit. Both of these teams have been very poor defensively. Golden State giving up 105.8 points per 100 possessions, whereas Boston is 105.3. Both teams are scoring a lot. No surprise that we have this as the highest total on the night at 225. Golden State's got a pace of 103.26, whereas Boston's 99.7, so it might be a little bit of a pace up game for Boston. As far as Golden State goes, we've got the two clear usage leaders. Kevin Durant, 28.8% usage on the season. Steph Curry, 29.4% usage on the season. These are the two guys that I am mainly looking at in this game. I think they're both awesome plays, cash and or tournaments on both sites. Steph really stands out as a value on FanDuel. I think it's pretty hard for him not to make 5x value on FanDuel tonight. Has the cake matchup with tiny Isaiah Thomas. Should be able to do whatever he wants. Like I said, it's going to be a high-paced game, high-scoring game. If Boston manages to stay in this game, I think both Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are probably going to make value. Clay has a 24.3% usage rate. He has been terrible, and he gets a tougher matchup with Avery Bradley. He's tournament only for me at this point. Probably not going to play him. Draymond has a 15.6% usage rate on the season, but a game like this is actually a game where I'm interested in targeting Draymond because I think he's got strong triple-double upside. The Boston Celtics are very weak at the rim. I think he can do a lot of damage on the glass. Find himself collecting a bunch of assists and even come away with some defensive statistics. If he's ever going to pay off his salary, I think it is in this game. Not interested in anybody else on the Golden State side of the ball. So it's pretty much Steph, especially on FanDuel and Draftkings. It's a good play either way. Kevin Durant and Draymond if he would fit into your roster construction better. Clay if you really want to go low owned, high upside tournament play here. On to Boston's side of the ball. Isaiah Thomas has a 35.4 usage rate without Jay Crowder and Al Horford. Al Horford is still questionable. Doubt he's going to play here. Crowder is definitely out. If you followed along, you know that I really don't like to play Isaiah Thomas. I don't think he's a great basketball player. He gets buckets, but that's about it. Wouldn't be surprised actually to see Golden State kind of run away from Boston in this one, and Golden State is on the front end of a back-to-back. If they would do that, I could see their guys being capped a little bit as far as their ceiling goes, but I still think they're going to make value. But I think Isaiah Thomas could fall short in that scenario, but his usage is just, you can't ignore it, and he is at least a good offensive player, if not much for the defensive end. So I think actually a good tournament strategy today is to play either Durant, Steph, or both, and then bring it back with Isaiah Thomas on the other end, because if Boston does stay in this game, it's probably going to be on his back. He's probably got maybe 40 real point upside, and that's probably going to get you there. In that scenario, Avery Bradley is second on the team with a 23.6% usage rate. I think he's a good tournament or cash option on both sides. His price is kind of high, but given the total and his usage and his rebounding prowess, I think he's got a pretty strong floor and gives you a little bit of ceiling again. If the Boston's able to stay in this game, he's probably going to see 40 plus minutes and be a big part of the reason why they're able to. Marcus Smart has a 17.2% usage rate. Going to play a lot of minutes again. Going to need to be on the floor to guard Kevin Durant. And wouldn't actually be surprised to see Jaylen Brown play a bunch of minutes in this game. when Golden State goes small, which they should a lot. I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe play the 4 here. And I think he's an interesting punt at minimum salary for a tournament. We saw him have a pretty big game against the Cleveland Cavaliers a couple games back, and I think he was on the floor a lot to kind of match up with LeBron James in that game. Kelly Olynyk has a 17.2% usage rate, and Amir Johnson has a 12.3% usage rate without Crowder and Horford in the lineup. Rolling the dice on these guys is not going to be something I'm doing for cash, but they both have pretty decent upside for tournaments, especially on FanDuel where they're priced a little more attractively. Another guy you could fit, either of them you could fit into a game stack if you wanted to run that out in tournaments, but I wouldn't be touching either in cash. I doubt Tyler Zeller plays a lot. Wouldn't actually be surprised to see him start and match up with Zaza Pachulia, but I don't think Zaza plays more than like 15 minutes in this game, so I wouldn't expect him to play a lot. Olynyk or Amir should be playing the 5 when they go small. So guys are options, not cash targets at all, but definitely tournament guys you could roster, especially on FanDuel. Moving on to the next highest total game, we've got the Brooklyn Nets visiting the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder are 9-point favorites here, and the total's at 218. This game is really interesting because Brooklyn is playing at an insane pace, 104.55 possessions per 48 minutes. OKC is not far off at 102.15 possessions for 48 minutes. Oklahoma City's been a pretty strong defensive team, 100.5 defensive rating, but they're only a 99.4 offensive rating. I'm not sure if Brooklyn can stay in this game, but they have been playing above expectations this year. And if they do, Russell Westbrook has an insane ceiling, and he's probably got a really legitimate 60-point floor in this game. His usage rate on the season is 40.6. I don't see any reason for that to be any lower today. He's not going to see any resistance from Sean Kilpatrick or Isaiah Whitehead or whoever else Brooklyn tries to throw at him. If you're not going to play Durant or Steph in your cash games, I think Russell is probably the next guy you need to be targeting. One thing to kind of take you off of him a little bit is Oladipo. Victor Oladipo's usage in the last game spiked a bit, and actually more than his usage, it was actually his shot efficiency. They played Phoenix, who is one of the worst defensive teams in the league, but so is Brooklyn, 105.4 defensive rating on the year. Victor Oladipo is still cheap. He played 40 minutes last game, saw a 23.5 usage rate, which is a 2% increase over his season average. I think he's definitely in play. I don't know if you can trust him in cash games here, but I think he's a strong tournament option. And if you don't want to play Russ in cash, I wouldn't hesitate from playing Depot, I guess, just to kind of hedge off of him. But it's kind of dicey there. I think I'd rather play Russ, but the price tag over 12K is tough to fit in. Not really too interested in anybody else from this game. Enes Kanter has a 25.8 usage rate. He's going to see an awesome matchup. He's only playing like 18 minutes a game, so he's going to need to double in those 18 minutes, which is certainly possible, but definitely on the higher end of his range of outcomes. Steven Adams has a 14.3% usage rate. Should see plenty of minutes in this game to match up with Brook Lopez, who we haven't heard anything about him sitting, so I'd expect him to play. And then Andre Roberson and his 11.4% usage rate are always is a tournament punt in such a great matchup, but definitely not somebody you can trust in cash. I love Wilson Chandler. We'll get to Wilson Chandler again. Nobody's talking about him or Fareed, and I think they're both awesome plays again tonight, and you're going to get them at low ownership again. They were only like 4 and 6% owned respectively last time, so we'll be going back to that well. But just to hit on Brooklyn real quick, Brook Lopez, 33% usage rate on the season. Tough matchup with Steven Adams in the post. Doubt he gets to his 10 rebounds he's going to need for a double-double tonight, but he does a lot of his damage on those high pick and rolls from behind the arc, so he will be he's got 30 real point upside if he's going to hit shots. Somebody I think you could look to, especially if you want to stack this game up with like a Russ and then bring it back with Brook Lopez on the other side, but not really a cash target for me given the other options on the slate. Sean Kilpatrick has a 30.3% usage rate, but I'm just not really looking to target any of the nets in this game because OKC has been so strong defensively. If I am targeting one, I want Brook Lopez. Moving on to the next game, third highest total on the slate looks like it's Phoenix Suns at Indiana Pacers. Pacers are 7-point favorites in this game. Totals at 216.5. Paul is an amazing play in this game. Just touched on how bad Phoenix has been defensively. They're at 107 defensive rating for the season. They're just absolute garbage. But the awesome thing about this game is that Indiana has not been much better themselves, so they are not really a threat to blow anybody out. I think Paul George and his 27.2% usage rate is an awesome cash target, awesome tournament target. Wouldn't shy away from either of them. If you don't want to play Kevin Durant at the small forward, I think you can come down to George. Jeff Teague is second on the team in usage at 23.2. Definitely a consideration just because of the matchup and the increased usage that he has been seeing. He's definitely trending upwards in the usage category, and he's been a lot more efficient with his shots lately. So I think he's a cash in a tournament target as well. Not a guy I ever really look to target, but you can't ask for a better spot. Miles Turner has a 22% usage rate. His price has finally started to come down. He's only 6K on Draftkings. Definitely a spot to possibly get on him for tournaments. Wouldn't trust him in cash games because he just has a ridiculous floor right now. He can't stay on the court because of his foul troubles, and doesn't have a high enough usage rate for when he is on the court. CJ Miles is interesting, 20.3% usage rate, and he will come off the bench chucking in this game, but I think there's probably better values on the slate. And Monta Ellis is a guy I just always skip over, 16.3 usage rate in the starting lineup, not a guy I want to play. Bring it back on the other side for Phoenix. We saw a pretty interesting turn of events in their last game. Brandon Knight has had a 26.6% usage rate on the season. That's actually been highest on their team, but it spiked all the way up to 41.5. He got hot, and they just kind of kept rolling with him. I can't trust any of these guys in cash right now because the rotations are so spread out. They're super tanktastic. They're not really trying or capable of winning games right now, even though they're keeping a lot of games close. So it's hard to tell what they're going to do on a night-to-night basis. Tyson Chandler is not going to play in this game. Alex Len makes for a strong play, I think, in cash on both sites just because you're going to need that salary relief to fit in some of these higher-priced studs. He's definitely a guy I'm going to be looking to play on both sites in cash. Not sure he's going to be a tournament target here, but I wouldn't try to talk you off of him. Devin Booker is the highest, probably the highest floor of anybody on the Suns. He's got a 26.5% usage rate on the season and is seeing about 35 minutes a game. If there's one guy I feel comfortable targeting on a nightly basis, it's going to be him. And I do like going back to Brandon Knight in this spot, at least for tournaments. His price did not adjust at all for his insane ceiling game that he had last time. The matchup is awesome. If he's going to see the shots again in this matchup, he's going to blow the top off of his ceiling. Definitely a guy I think you can play in tournaments. Would love stacking him up with Paul George in this spot. I'm not going to play TJ Warren, not going to play Eric Bledsoe, can't trust the minutes. So I think Len and Brandon Knight are probably my two favorite targets for Phoenix, and Devin Booker would be third, but Booker's price is a little bit higher. So again, if you want to stack up like the Golden State guys and then bring it back with Len and Knight as cheaper options, I think that's an interesting way to go. Also interesting, cheap guys to help you to get Russell Westbrook in there in cash, which, given some of the value opening up, seems a little bit more attractive. Moving on to the next highest total, looks like it is Portland Trailblazers going on the road to face the Pelicans. Total's 215. This game is a pick'em. Portland is playing really poorly lately. They are the, I think, second worst defensive team in the league at 108.5 defensive rating. So definitely a game that we want to fire up the Pelicans. The problem with the Pelicans is that Anthony Davis is back in the lineup. He's got a 34.6% usage rate on the season. It had been closer to 40% to start the year. Hopefully he gets up closer to that 40%. I think he's an awesome tournament target. After missing the last game and with all the other really attractive studs on the slate, I think that he could go under-owned, and he has a ridiculous ceiling in this spot. Portland has nobody to match up with him at all at the 4 or 5 spot. So if he gets it rolling here, he plays 38 to 40 minutes. He's closer to that 40% usage rate. He's got, we've seen him put up 100 DK points before. If he's going to do it again, this is a good matchup for it. Like I said, you couldn't get much better as far as the overall team efficiency for Portland and his individual matchup. We've got Drew Holiday coming back from a long absence tonight. He's got a 30 minutes cap, but his return pretty much takes me off of any of the guards. He's going to be a high usage player. He's their second best player behind Brow. So I'm pretty much not interested in Galloway anymore. Etwan Moore, not interesting to me. Terrence Jones, I'm off him. Tim Frazier, off him. Definitely not going to target Drew Holiday in cash, but I don't think he's the craziest tournament punt. I think in 27 to 30 minutes, if his usage rate is close to 30 in this awesome matchup, he could probably give you like 20 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, something like that, a couple defensive statistics, and get you to that 6x that you would need from him on DraftKings, and he's not going to be owned at all. His price is way too high on FanDuel. Definitely not a consideration over there. Going to the other side of the ball here, we've got Damian Lillard as the season-long usage rate at leader at 31.7, but that is starting to trend down for him. Over the last 5 games, he's only got a 28.8% usage rate, whereas CJ McCollum's got a 27.2% usage rate on the year, and it's starting to trend up a bit for him at 27.6 over the last 5. If I'm playing one of these guys, I think I'm going to go with CJ again. He's much cheaper on both sites. And like I said, he's definitely trending towards being the usage leader here. Damian had like a wrist or a hand injury that he was dealing with, and his performance has kind of dipped. I don't know if the two are correlated, but it's enough for me to not want to play him in cash games or really tournaments. I just think there's better plays on the slate. He's in like the same kind of price range as Steph, and I'm definitely going to play Steph Curry over Damian Lillard at that price. But again, tournament option if you think this game is going to stay close, which it's projected to, and there's going to be a lot of points scored, which again it's projected to. I think you could play maybe Brow, bring it back with CJ, and then kind of fill in from there. Mo Harkless, also interesting, especially on FanDuel where his price is still 4.6. He's got a 15.6 usage rate on the season, and he is in a pretty good matchup. Not too concerned with he's probably going to see either Cunningham or Solomon Hill. Not sure he's going to be a cash target because there's a bunch of guys in the mid-range on FanDuel that are really good options. The aforementioned Wilson Chandler, definitely going to go with him over Mo, even though he's $1,100 more expensive. But you got to find that salary to jam him in there. But he's definitely a tournament target in this kind of high-paced, high-total game. Evan Turner is a guy to keep your eye on, especially on FanDuel, where he's only 3.9K as a really low punt. He's got a 20.1 usage rate over the last 5. Alan Crabb is banged up. He had an injury in the last game. Stay on top of the injury news for these guys. If Alan Crabb would be out, I think Turner could see a ton of minutes at the 1, 2, and 3 with the second unit and see some increased usage. He is terrible. He's just a bad basketball player. But at that price point, you can't argue with the minutes and shot attempts that he will see if Crabb is not going to play. Moving on to the next highest total, I want to say it's Toronto at Denver. Yep, still the Toronto Raptors at the Denver Nuggets. Toronto is a 3.5-point favorite here. The total is 12.5. Both of these teams have been pretty bad defensively. Again, Toronto is 105.8 on the defensive rating. Denver is 105.4. Denver's a really strong rebounding team at 54.9. I think it's pretty safe to say that Toronto is just the better overall team here, but there are definitely some reasons to think that Denver will stay competitive in this game and that we could definitely get some really fantasy viable games out of guys on each side of the ball here. Denver has changed their rotations over the last two, and this is, like I mentioned, something that people aren't really talking about. I don't know why, but if they're not going to play these guys, I think it's an awesome spot for us to get in there and take advantage of it. Over the last two games, we've seen Wilson Chandler put up a team-leading 27.8% usage rate in 31 minutes. He's playing minutes at the 3 and the 4. Good matchup for him individually. Don't see anybody on the Toronto side that's going to slow him down at the 3 or 4. Not worried about Patterson. Not worried about DeMar Carroll. Not worried about Norman Powell. I think he's a strong cash game target and a strong tournament target again tonight. And definitely someone I'm looking to use on both sites. They didn't really overcorrect his price like they did a lot of guys on this slate. So I think he's still at a profitable price point, especially on FanDuel. Next guy to take a look at here is Kenneth Faried. He is now starting at the 4, playing a lot of minutes at the 4. They're not playing Jokic or Nurkic at the 4 anymore. They're strictly 5. And then Faried and Chandler are splitting minutes at the 4. And then Faried is actually playing the 5 next to Chandler at the 4 to close this game, or to close games. And if this game is going to stay close, I think we could see a lot of Chandler at the 4 and Faried at the 5 coming down the stretch. Faried, again, is playing 27 minutes per game over the last two and has a 23% usage rate. I'm gonna bet on this trend to continue. I'm using both of these guys, Chandler and Faried, in cash and tournaments on both sites. Again, I just think it's a profitable ownership and price for their new roles. And again, this is assuming that the roles continue, but I think they will because they've had success the last couple games. Emmanuel Mudiay is seeing 34 minutes and a 21% usage rate over the last couple. He's got a tough individual matchup with Lowry. 21 is way off of his. I think his season usage total is closer to 28, so I'm not interested in him. Danilo Gallinari has played 34 minutes over the last two games and has a 20.4 usage rate. Just better small forward plays, including Wilson Chandler. Jameer Nelson is playing 33 minutes per game and has a 14.8% usage rate over the last two games. Somebody I think you could punt with on either site, but not a guy I'm looking for in cash at all. Moving on to the other side of the ball, DeMar DeRozan, one of the biggest storylines to start the year, has a 37.3% usage rate, gets an awesome matchup. If the Denver Nuggets do start Mudiay and Jameer Nelson, I would expect Jameer Nelson to cover Lowry. Jameer is way smaller than Mudiay, and Mudiay should get matched up with DeMar DeRozan then in their individual matchup, and DeMar will toast him. Mudiay is a very, very poor individual defender. DeMar DeRozan is one of the strongest plays on the board tonight, I think, especially if this game stays close. You couldn't ask for a better individual or team matchup. We know where the usage rate is at, and he's in play to score 40 real points tonight, which is going to get you there on both sites. So he's a guy I'm definitely trying to work into my cash lineups. Kind of a situation where we saw it yesterday with Harden, where he was in an amazing spot, but his price was just so high, and there were other really good plays on the slate where maybe you don't want to play Russ tonight at that 12K price point, and you can, especially in tournaments, pivot off with Depot, and then go with Durant, Steph, DeMar DeRozan here, and differentiate yourself a little bit. If not DeRozan, it's going to be Lowry scoring the points for Toronto. Lowry's got a 24.6 usage rate on the season. I think he's a great play. It doesn't matter whether Jameer or Mudiay matches up with him. He is going to be able to get over in that matchup. Should play a bunch of minutes here. And again, if this game stays close and he sees 38 plus minutes, I think it's very viable for him and DeRozan to both make value in this game. I'm not interested in Jonas Valanciunas in cash, but he is definitely interesting in tournaments because the Denver Nuggets play the traditional kind of big center lineups more often, and he will usually see bigger minutes against lineups like that. Definitely a tournament option at low ownership with some upside, but definitely not a guy I'm looking to use in cash. Next guy next game we're going to look at here is going to be the San Antonio Spurs at the Los Angeles Lakers. Spurs are 7-point road favorites. Total here is 210. This is kind of a weird game. The Spurs have been trending towards a lower usage rate for Kawhi over the last 4 games. Over the last 4 games, Pau Gasol has played over 30 minutes in each one. It's with the fact that rosters lock on both sites now at the start of the first game. It's really tough to trust any of the Spurs in cash, but I think Pau is at a really profitable price point on both sites right now. I think he's 6K on Draftkings and 6.2 on FanDuel. Like I mentioned, he's played over 30 minutes in the last 4 games. The Spurs are off for the next 2 days. They don't play again until the 21st. If Pau's going to see over 30 minutes, he's got a 24.6% usage rate over the last 4, and he gets an individual matchup with Timofey Mozgov. I think he is a locked and loaded play in cash on both sites. I think he's got some ceiling for tournaments at that price point as well. It's just super scary to be using an old guy like Pau on the Spurs in a game that's not going to start until 10 o'clock, and we're not going to have probably a confirmation that he's going to play. I might suck it up and do it. I don't know. But assuming that he does play, he's an awesome play in cash and tournaments. Kawhi's usage has gone down from 32 on the season. It was up closer to like 34, 35 to start the year, to 27.6. I think they'd rather play that more kind of balanced style of offense, and he's just not a guy that I'm going to be looking to play in my cash games just because I can't trust the usage to be there. He's obviously going to be efficient on every anytime he takes the court because he's going to be better than the guy that he is matched up against. So I think the ceiling is there because I mean it's possible that he only takes 16 shots, but he makes like 12 of them and gives you 30 points, 10 rebounds, and a bunch of defensive statistics. But just a guy I'm not going to trust in cash. I'd rather go to a Paul George or a Kevin Durant on this slate. LaMarcus Aldridge has seen some pretty good minutes and usage over the last 4 games as well. He's trending upwards, but again, it's tough for me to trust any of these guys. Tony Parker is also trending up, has an 18.9 usage rate on the season, but it's been 23 over the last 4 games. And he gets an awesome matchup with D'Angelo Russell. He's a guy I probably wouldn't try to talk you off of, but not a guy I really want to play. Moving on to the other side of the ball, we've got the Lakers. The Lakers have been really surprisingly good this year. The problem with them on any given night is that none of their guys see over 30 minutes. Luke Walton is really keeping the rotation spread out. If I'm going to play anyone from the Lakers, one guy I'm really interested in is Julius Randle. He's got a 21.5% usage rate on the season. He's got a really high price. He's 6.8 on DraftKings. We saw him put up a triple-double in the last game, and we have seen the Spurs be very susceptible to big men. So I think that he's got triple-double upside in this game. Again, don't really think he gets there. Don't think he's a cash play, but somebody that you could probably get at very low ownership. Jordan Clarkson is only 5K on DraftKings. He's got a 25% usage rate on the season. Lou Williams has a 28.8% usage rate on the season, and he's under 5K. They have really priced these guys to sell in the matchup against San Antonio. I think they're both interesting tournament options, especially if the Spurs kind of run away from the Lakers here. We know the Spurs are a better team, But what we've seen on the court from the Lakers kind of makes you think that maybe they could hang. I don't really know what to think of this game. I'm probably going to stay away except for Powell because I think Powell's the way his minutes and usage are trending. He is priced way too low for the matchup, so I think he's an interesting tournament and cash game target tonight. Moving on to the next game, it is the Atlanta Hawks traveling to visit the Charlotte Hornets. Total is 207.5. Both of these are really strong defensive teams, but they're also both very efficient offensive teams. We've seen Kemba Walker he's one of my favorite plays. I've played him pretty much every time out this year. I want to play him again in this matchup. Not scared of Schroeder at all. The Hawks defensive rating does give me some pause. They're playing at 95.1 point defensive rating, which is the second best in the league. I've kind of talked about how I think they've been a little fraudulent this year. They played the Sixers a bunch. They played my Wizards, who have been garbage for the most point this year. So maybe against a better team here, and the Charlotte Hornets, they see a trend upwards in their defensive rating. Charlotte's been a very efficient offensive team this year at 106.4 offensive rating. Kemba Walker is their clear usage leader at 30.2. If this game does stay close, which I'm expecting it to, as is Vegas, I think Kemba could have another ceiling game here. Gives you a strong floor at his price point on both Draftkings and FanDuel. I think he's a strong cash target, and nobody ever plays Kemba, so he's an awesome tournament target if you want to pivot off of Russell Westbrook, which I may be doing tonight. Moving on, tough to trust anybody else on this team. Again, the Atlanta Hawks have been good defensively. I'm probably not going to try to pick on them with anybody else. It's pretty much going to be Kemba or bust for me in this game. Moving on to the other side of the ball, we have Dennis Schroeder, who is the usage leader for the Hawks at 25.4. You can play him, but if you followed along with my basketball analysis, you know that I hate him. I don't think he's any good at basketball. Never a guy that I want to play, and the matchup with Charlotte is enough to take me off of him. Dwight Howard's going to be back in this game. I think Dwight Howard's a sneaky option here. Charlotte is not good at the rim, 49.4 rebounding rate, whereas Atlanta's 52.3. I think Howard could find himself in a ceiling spot tonight where he has to play, 35 plus minutes in a tight game and has a good matchup. I doubt anyone's going to play him. I think he gives you some really strong double-double upside. Might be able to get you, like a 16-16 kind of game with a bunch of defensive statistics. Could definitely pay off his price point with some upside in tournaments. Probably not the strongest cash game consideration, but I probably wouldn't take you off of him because, again, I think he's pretty much a lock for a double-double in this spot. The only thing I would have pause about is the fact that he's coming off an injury, but I'm assuming it was minor and that he is good to go if he's going to play tonight. Not going to be on Kent Bazemore in this spot. Not going to be on Timmy Hardaway. Paul Millsap has a 25% usage rate. He just hasn't really been playing well. I mean, he's a guy that I like as far as his individual talent goes, but he just hasn't done it this year. Probably going to stay off of him until he kind of proves it, even though his price tag is about as low as it's been in a long time. So I guess if you want to get onto him in a tournament, maybe a game stack here, you want to go Kemba and then Millsap on the other side, I think that's a very legitimate play. Next game, we've got the Clippers visiting the Sacramento Kings. This total is at 204. Clippers have been the best defensive team in the league so far. We saw a little chink in the armor last game against Memphis, where Memphis really torched them. I like the Memphis guys in that spot. I think they're kind of they were kind of in a spot where what they do offensively matched up well with what the Clippers do defensively. I'm not so sure we see that again tonight. Not really interested in any of the Sacramento guys. I mean, Boogie always has DeMarcus Cousins always has a really high ceiling. He's got a 35.3% usage rate in the 4 games that Darren Collison has been back. Definitely a tournament option. Got some ceiling there. Blake can't stop him. Nobody can really stop him. But just the overall offensive efficiency, I think you have to project Sacramento to take a hit in tonight, so that would kind of take me off of him. Darren Collison is kind of interesting at his 22% usage rate. If he's still going to come off the bench, he won't see Chris Paul, gets a bunch of shots up against the second unit. He's only 5K on Draftkings. Interesting enough, tournament target, not a guy I'm looking at in cash. I think you could play Boogie or DC Darren Collison in tournaments. Not interested in Rudy Gay at all. Luke Richard Mbah-a-Moute has been one of the strongest, if not strongest, individual defender at the small forward position this year, and Rudy Gay is never a guy that's really appealing at all. He's got a 24.6% usage rate, playing a bunch of minutes. Don't want to play him. On the other side of the ball, the Clippers usage leader has been Blake Griffin, 27.4% usage. Gets the individual matchup with DeMarcus Cousins here. Not great for him. Could be fouling. We know that Boogie draws fouls and also gives them, so not sure what to expect here. I think Chris Paul's usage might, if it funnels away a little bit from Blake, we might see it go to Chris Paul. He's only 23.3% usage on the year, but I think he could get up closer to 28 or 30 in this game. Has an awesome matchup at Ty Lawson's going to start. They're definitely going to be a little bit motivated after kind of coming off of an embarrassing loss last game to come back and prove themselves. It's just hard to trust any of these other guys for me. It's pretty much Blake Griffin or CP3. If you want any of the other guys, I mean, Redick's got a 21.5% usage, and he saw a little bit of a blow-up game in the last spot. But he's just too scoring dependent. Can't trust him on a night-to-night basis. We have seen shooting guards give Sacramento trouble in the past. So maybe if you want to go away from Blake Griffin and go towards Chris Paul or JJ Redick, it's a play you could make. Never want to play DeAndre Jordan. Doesn't take enough shots. But in a closer game like this, I guess you could do it. Actually, something that needs to be mentioned is the fact that Sacramento is one of the slowest paced teams in the NBA, 95.43 possessions per 48 minutes, which is a drastic change from last year, where they were one of the fastest paced teams. So really not any cash targets in this game for me. DeMarcus Cousins or Darren Collison on the Sacramento side, or Chris Paul or JJ Redick on the Clippers side, but just don't really love this game in general. Moving on to the second to last game, it's going to be the Detroit Pistons traveling to face the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavs are 8.5-point favorites. Total is 203.5. Not sure what to do with this game. It's a pretty low total. Definitely expect Cleveland to play well in this spot. Detroit's been sneaky good defensively. They're only giving up 100.5 defensive rating. But the one thing that I will say for this game is that Cleveland has been kind of bad on the defensive end. They've given up 103.6 defensive rating. And it kind of looks like they're coasting a little bit on defense. I mean, they will walk right into probably the number one seed without even trying in the Eastern Conference. So they are not necessarily motivated on a night-to-night basis. So if you want to kind of play on that and assume that Detroit is going to be able to score enough points to stay in the game, I think this is kind of a sneaky stack game where you could maybe go LeBron and then bring it back with like Tobias Harris on the other end. Kyrie is the usage leader for Cleveland on the year at 29.9. Probably going to take a little bit of a hit with LeBron James back in the lineup, but I still think he's playable, and I'd probably rather play other guys in cash, but I think he's a tournament play. Like I said, if you want to stack this game. Kevin Love's been awesome this year. He's rebounding really well. He's got a 26.8% usage rate, but his price is getting pretty high, especially on Draftkings. Definitely think he's still in play on FanDuel, but I'm looking elsewhere. Channing Frye's got a 25.2% usage rate, and I think that we saw that some of the concerns, there was some concern that he wasn't going to be as effective without LeBron James on the floor, and that kind of came true last game. Obviously, LeBron is going to be back in this spot, so I think Frye is definitely in play as a punt here. Like I said, especially if you think that Detroit's going to keep it close. And one thing, I never play Tristan Thompson. Tristan Thompson is has like one of the lowest usage rates in the league. But what we have seen is other centers, opposing centers, put up massive stat lines against Andre Drummond. Drummond is kind of prone to being, maybe the word is, I don't know if I want to say lazy, but not focused on the defensive end a lot, and just gotten absolutely torched. Tristan Thompson's really cheap. I think he's a sneaky play for a double-double here, and I think he's a legitimate tournament option. He is pretty much never in play for me, but a guy that I could go to just because of the matchup. And I think he could see increased minutes because he has to be on the floor to defend Andre Drummond. It's not like they're going to feel good about pairing or matching Channing Frye up with Andre Drummond. So Fry's in play as a tournament option, but I actually think the sneakiest option here on the Cavs for tournaments is going to be Tristan Thompson. LeBron, Love, Kyrie, all in play for tournaments for sure. Probably better cash plays on the slate. Like I said, I really like Paul George in that kind of higher tier. For small forwards, I'd probably rather go there and save and pay up elsewhere. On the other side of the ball, we've got Drummond. Andre Drummond is the clear usage leader for the Pistons at 24.1% usage. Just not a guy I really play ever. Tobias Harris is normally my favorite target for the Pistons. He's got a 21.9 usage rate on the season, playing 34 minutes per game. Like I said, I think there's some sneaky fantasy potential for Cleveland because they kind of aren't trying that hard on defense. So I think if I'm going to try to take advantage of that, it's probably going to be with Tobias Harris or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's got a 19.1% usage rate on the year and plays 34 minutes. John Lure is also a guy that deserves mentioning. He's been playing a lot of minutes over the last 4 games, I think 27 minutes, and seeing a 23.8% usage rate, especially if Cleveland would kind of come out and dominate this game. I think he could be an interesting punt off of the Detroit bench, guy that could come out and play a bunch of minutes and have a bunch of shot attempts. Marcus Morris, not a guy I'm going to play in this matchup. If he burns me, he burns me. On to the last game, which is the Memphis Grizzlies going on the road to visit the Dallas Mavericks. Memphis is 2.5-point favorites here with a total of 186. This total is like 20 points lower than any other total on the slate. I don't really want to use anybody from this game anywhere. Seth Curry is going to be a really popular option tonight because Darren Williams, Dirk Nowitzki, and JJ Barea are going to be out of this game. So Seth is probably going to play a lot of minutes, going to have the ball in his hand a lot. His price really came up on DraftKings to 5.2K. I could see playing him in cash just because of the minutes floor and the usage is going to be there. But the thing is, and I posted this on Twitter if you want to check it out earlier, that let me pull it up here. The usage leaders with Harrison Barnes, Seth Curry, and Wes Matthews on the court, while Darren Williams, Dirk Nowitzki, and JJ Barea are off the court. In the 36 minutes they've shared the court so far this year, Harrison Barnes has an astronomical 40.4 usage rate. Justin Anderson is second with 26 minutes playing next to those 3 guys at 23.4 usage. Wes Matthews has an 18.2 usage, and Seth Curry has a 17% usage. I think Seth Curry kind of has a scary floor here. I get the fact that he's going to be on the court a lot. I'm not sure that he's going to see a ton of shot attempts here. I think Harrison Barnes is going to be the guy that's going to be the focal point of the offense. They're going to run sets for him. They're going to get the ball in his hands and let him go to work against Chandler Parsons or Ennis or whoever they want to throw at him. I think Harrison Barnes is actually the most interesting target here for Dallas, especially on FanDuel, where he's only 6K. I think he's a pretty good mid-range tournament option, and I actually might not shy away from playing him in cash. I would much rather play Wilson Chandler, but I think you could legitimately play both of them in cash on FanDuel. Probably going to be too expensive for me in cash on DraftKings, but definitely a probably lower owned tournament target. I think most people are going to be gravitating towards Seth Curry on DraftKings, where maybe you could pivot off of him in tournaments with an Oladipo or a Brandon Knight play. Brandon Knight's way cheaper, and like we talked about earlier, awesome matchup. Kind of a crapshoot with whether or not he's going to see minutes and shot attempts, but if he does, I think his ceiling is maybe twice as high as Seth Curry's in this spot. Memphis is a decent defensive team, and Mike Conley is a very solid, if not spectacular, individual defender. I can see playing Seth Curry in cash for the block just because, he could probably get you 30 DraftKings points in 40 minutes tonight. But I just don't think the ceiling is there. I think he's a pretty easy fade in tournaments with the floor that I think he sees in comparison to the ownership that he's probably going to see tonight. I think there's guys with better ceilings for sure. Wes Matthews, only 4.9K, a guy that you could play, I guess, in cash or tournaments. He's shooting a ton of 3-pointers. If they go down, you're gonna be happy. If they don't, you're not gonna be happy. So again, probably not a guy I want to play in cash, but definitely a tournament option. Justin Anderson, mentioned him. Justin Anderson and Dwight Powell are interesting options here because I think there's a really great chance that Memphis just absolutely destroys Dallas in this spot. Dallas has been terrible on the year, and I think Memphis is trending upwards. So if you want to kind of play the blowout factor here, which is never a great idea, but this is as good of a spot as any with Memphis or Dallas having nobody to play. I think you could maybe go for Justin Anderson as a punt, Dwight Powell as a punt. Actually, I do need to mention that on FanDuel at 4.1K, I'm playing Seth Curry in cash, definitely for the block, but I'm definitely getting off of him in tournaments. Again, I want guys with higher ceilings and just lower ownerships. Other side of the ball. Actually, one thing I have done is stack up this game, especially on FanDuel, where I think the prices are a little more profitable. If Dallas is going to stay in this game, I think it's going to be because of Harrison Barnes and I guess Seth Curry having really strong games. So I played a lineup with Harrison Barnes and Seth Curry and then brought it back on the other side with Marc Gasol and Mike Conley. I think they will both have monster games if this game stays close. So I think that's an interesting tournament lineup to make, and I doubt it'll be very highly owned. Gasol's got a 28.3% usage rate on the year. Conley's got a 25.8% usage rate on the year. Zach Randolph's sort of interesting. Doubt he sees a ton of minutes in this game. Like I said, just because of the way I think this game is going to play out, he probably won't need to be on the floor a ton, but he has a 30.1% usage rate while he is on the floor. So, with all of that said, that covers the slate for tonight. Good luck to everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you guys are successful tonight, and hope to see you again next time.